Tonight, you'll probably do something remarkable. You'll drink water without wondering what's living inside it. You'll eat food without asking whether it's slowly destroying your teeth. You'll go to sleep expecting to wake up tomorrow. And you won't think twice about any of it. Because to you, that's normal. For most of human history, it wasn't. And nowhere is that easier to see than ancient Egypt. When you think of ancient Egypt, you think of pyramids, gold masks, pharaohs, treasure buried beneath stone. That's your first mistake. Because you're thinking about the people history remembered, not the people who actually lived there. The average Egyptian never wore gold, never ruled a kingdom, never commanded an army. Most never came anywhere close to the life you imagine. In fact, statistically, if you were born in ancient Egypt, there's a good chance you wouldn't survive childhood at all. And yet this civilization lasted for more than 3,000 years. That's the mystery. Because if life was so difficult, why did it work? To answer that, we need to start at the beginning, your beginning.
Imagine you're born in a village beside the Nile. No hospitals, no vaccines, no antibiotics, no understanding of germs. A child develops a fever. Today, that's usually a problem. Back then, it could become a funeral. Bioarchaeologists studying skeletal remains from sites such as Abydos and Deir el-Medina estimate the child mortality before age 5 may have reached between 30 and 50% in some communities. Think about that for a moment. Imagine every classroom you've ever sat in. Now imagine half the seats empty. Not because those children moved away, because they never became adults. That wasn't a national tragedy. That was ordinary life. And that's the first thing modern people struggle to understand. Ancient Egyptians weren't surviving a disaster. They were surviving normality. If you made it past childhood, congratulations. You've already beaten odds that would terrify most modern parents. But now comes the Nile, the river that made everything possible. Without the Nile, there is no Egypt. No cities, no farms, no temples, no pyramids, nothing. Every year the river flooded. It left behind rich black soil. That soil fed millions. It transformed a desert into one of the most successful civilizations in human history. But the river had a second job, one nobody talks about in school. It was slowly infecting the people who depended on it. Egyptologist Rosalie David, who spent decades studying Egyptian mummies at the University of Manchester, found evidence of schistosomiasis in ancient remains, a parasite carried through fresh water. A farmer walks through an irrigation canal. A fisherman stands knee-deep in the river. A child swims. The parasite enters through the skin. No pain, no warning, no dramatic moment. Just years of fatigue, bleeding, organ damage, and illness quietly building inside the body. The strange thing is that nobody could see it happening. When we imagine danger, we imagine something obvious. A lion, a crocodile, a war. Ancient Egypt teaches a different lesson. Sometimes the thing feeding you is also killing you. If you were watching this and thinking, at least I'd be a farmer, not a laborer, here's the part that ruins that plan too. Over 90% of the population worked the land. That meant bent backs, cracked feet, and full days under a sun that regularly passed 40 degrees Celsius. And the entire system depended on one flood, arriving on schedule every single year. If it came late, if it came low, there was no backup harvest, no imported grain, just famine. And you, watching the river decide whether you eat this year. And honestly, that's what makes this civilization so fascinating. Almost nothing dangerous looked dangerous. The river looked beautiful, the fields looked fertile, the food looked abundant. But danger wasn't hiding at the edges of life. It was woven into life itself. And nowhere is that clearer than bread. Imagine your kitchen table tonight. Now imagine every single meal on it is quietly grinding your teeth down to nothing. That's not an exaggeration. That's breakfast in ancient Egypt. People love to romanticize ancient food. Natural, organic, simple. The reality was stranger. Ancient Egyptians ground grain using stone tools. Tiny fragments of stone broke off and mixed into the flour, then into the dough, then into every meal. Researchers examining mummified remains have found teeth worn down so severely that many adults reached middle age with teeth ground almost to the roots. Not from sugar, not from sweets, from bread.
Imagine eating something every day that slowly destroys your teeth. Then imagine every person you know experiencing the exact same thing. No dentist, no painkillers, no alternative. At what point does pain stop feeling unusual? Now imagine you get sick or hurt on top of all that. Egyptian medicine was genuinely advanced for its time. They understood anatomy from embalming. They performed real surgery. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts ever discovered, documents real clinical observations of wounds and fractures. And then the same papyrus tells you to treat that wound with moldy bread and animal dung. Not as a joke, as medicine. The belief was that foul things repelled evil spirits. And here's the strange part. Sometimes it actually worked. Mold produces antibacterial compounds, the same basic idea behind penicillin 3,000 years early, by accident. Most of the time, though, you weren't getting penicillin. You were just getting infection on top of injury, with someone confidently calling it a cure. Now, imagine you're accused of a crime. Doesn't matter what. Theft, fraud, a debt unpaid. Egypt is remembered for Ma'at, the concept of cosmic order and balance, justice the same for everyone under the same sun. That's the postcard version. Here's the real one. Records from Deir el-Medina show punishments for the exact same crime, ranging from a beating to mutilation to execution. Now, imagine the man standing next to you committed the identical crime. Same theft, same court, same gods watching.
And he walks out with a fine because his family has land and yours doesn't. The order everyone praises was enforced almost entirely on the people with no power to push back against it. Now here's the fact that changes how you see everything you've heard so far. The Great Pyramid took an estimated 20 years and tens of thousands of workers to build. Most of those workers spent their entire lives within walking distance of it. They quarried the stone, they hauled it, they stacked it block by block until it touched the sky, and almost none of them ever saw what was inside. The interior chambers, the burial shaft, the sarcophagus they were building all of this for were sealed the moment construction finished, reserved for one person and one person only. Not the architect, not the foreman, not the thousands of families who gave their backs to it, the pharaoh. And after that, no one, for thousands of years. But here's the part that actually breaks people's brains when they hear it for the first time. When you picture ancient Egypt, you probably picture it as one block of time. Pyramids, pharaohs, Cleopatra, all the same era. It wasn't. The Great Pyramid was built around 2560 BC. Cleopatra ruled Egypt around 30 BC. That's a gap of roughly 2,500 years between the pyramid being built and Cleopatra being alive. Now compare that to the gap between Cleopatra and you watching this right now. That gap is only around 2,000 years old, which means Cleopatra is closer in time to you, to smartphones, to the internet, to this exact video, than she was to the people who built the pyramid she grew up looking at. By the time Cleopatra was born, the Great Pyramid was already a 2,000-year-old ruin to her. She didn't live in ancient Egypt. She lived at the end of it, looking back at a civilization that was already ancient history to her, the same way you look back at her. So picture it. You spend your life building the single most famous structure humanity has ever produced. You die without ever standing inside it. And the people walking past it today, the tourists, the photographs, the documentaries, have technically gotten closer to the heart of your life's work than you ever did. Everything Egypt built, it built for someone else to keep. And it gets worse once you die. Imagine spending your entire life preparing for what comes after it. Now imagine you can't afford it. All of it. The canopic jars, the gold, the Book of the Dead, the elaborate 70-day mummification process was a luxury good. Full mummification was for the elite. If you were an ordinary Egyptian, your afterlife was a shallow pit in the desert sand. No embalming, no tomb, no provisions. A civilization that built its entire identity around the afterlife mostly couldn't afford to give one to the people who built it. So picture the full life. You survive a coin-flip childhood. You spend it farming beside a river that's infecting you while you drink from it. Your bread is wearing your teeth down to the gum line. If you get hurt, the cure might be moldy bread and a prayer. If you break a law as a commoner, the punishment is far heavier than it would be for someone richer. And if you die poor, which is most likely, you're buried in sand with nothing, in a society obsessed with what happens next. That's the deeper story hidden inside ancient Egypt. Humans can normalize almost anything, even suffering, especially when everyone around them is suffering too. The pyramids are still standing, 4,500 years later. That's the part everyone remembers.
What almost nobody remembers is who they're standing on top of. Generations of farmers and laborers who lived short, parasite-ridden, sun-scorched lives and never got within a mile of the glory carved into those walls. The gold survived. The people who built it mostly didn't. So no, you wouldn't be a pharaoh. You'd be the person farming beside the river that was killing you, slowly, while building a monument you'd never be buried anywhere near, and never even allowed to enter, in a civilization so ancient it made its own queens feel like tourists looking back at history. And the fact that this civilization lasted 3,000 years anyway isn't a tribute to how good life was back then. It's a tribute to one simple, uncomfortable truth. How much